Thanks everyone for joining us. And this is a panel with and about Fortis. Let's do a quick round of introductions for everyone. I think a lot of people here already know you, but just quickly mention your name and what you're doing currently at Fortis, and then we'll dive right into the conversation. Yeah.
Oh, hello. I'm Jeferson. I'm kind of like my title is strange, but like I'm kind of like the head of production, like global production at Fortis. Been making games for a little over 20 years. I'm originally from Brazil, but I also lived in Helsinki, in London, San Francisco. Now I live in Lisbon, which is the winner. And I've been here in Romania like quite a few times. I actually presented the Dev.Play before, both as like my own company, but also as Bandai Namco, and I was at EA as well. So I've been coming here on and off for the last 15 years.
I think you guys know me. I'm Shawn, the COO of Fortis, and I've only been to Romania twice, but I like it.
I'm Daniel. I'm one of the co-founders of Metagame, together with these two guys. We got acquired by Fortis earlier this year, and before at Metagame, I was the CEO, and I was also running the technical side of things.
I'm Dan Teodorescu. I've been in Romanian game development since 1247. In those 800 years, I have never seen a vampire. So game designer. I've been game designer, lead game designer in several companies. Gameloft, Electronic Arts, and then Metagame. And now I'm a game director on one of those yet unannounced but very innovative projects, working with mostly with the amazing team in Bucharest.
Hello, Radu Pop, Noper. I'm an art director at Fortis. Prior to that, I founded Metagame with these guys. And prior to that, I was in a different industry doing art for big advertising firms and clients.
How come you didn't help us with ours?
I did.
He actually did our logo, which was amazing.
Yeah. Also to mention, Noper is out of the 5 here, definitely by far the most popular person in Fortis right now, by far.
Yes. Very, very hard to get him on stage, though. All right, guys. So my first question to you. So I've known those three guys for a long time, and we worked together actually back when they started the Metagame, and with those two guys even before in back at Gameloft. So earlier this year, probably March or something, at work doing my thing, I refresh like my news media website, and I see like this announcement: Fortis acquires these companies, Metagame, Octagon, and Doppio, and I'm a fairly connected guy in the local industry. I thought, I think I know what's going on, but that was a surprise. And I think it was a surprise for a lot of people because, when Metagame got set up, it was on the premise of these, very talented, very senior people doing some things, design-focused company and so on. So that was really exciting, and then they released a couple of products that were fairly successful, and then this news. So I'd like, let's clarify what happened. How did that happen? How did you guys connect? Can we have a little bit of that story from the both from the Metagame side, but also for the Fortis side?
We were not looking to be acquired. I think we're sure we wanted to make our next game. We were we had a pitch. I pitched it like 1,000 times. I did all the work, going to the conferences, pitching, going to VCs, going to strategic partners, and pitching and pitching and pitching. But at a point in time, we were introduced to Steve and Calvin and Shawn by Jeff. So actually, it was an interesting experience. Like, we had several when we were looking for investment for our own project, minority investment, or producing the like a producer type of deal for the project. Most of the things that actually went to higher stages, like when we were like having the important discussions with the NDAs and the like terms, and that were somehow by working our network of, you know, like I've done the pitch so many times for many companies, and when there was no referral, things really didn't work out. That was my experience. Maybe in some situations things went differently, but we were looking just for investment for our own games. And then, as you could see from the presentation, then we got into that kind of vision, and then I was personally interested very fast because like I come from the design background. I was like, okay, this sounds like super interesting. But the discussion was, we're not interested to invest. That's not what we do, and this is one of the good things about Shawn, because he always puts forward really early the pain points so that things are clear. You know how we're standing. So I don't know if you guys want to add something. You don't.
Yeah, I mean, it was clear from the beginning that we have great chemistry with these guys, and that the company they want to build is basically the company that we also want to build. But we actually, our plan was less ambitious, and we had, you know, much more time to be spent to get to that stage. So, you know, it was, we said, guys, if we join this company, we're just going to accelerate, you know, what we want to do significantly. So yeah, that was one of the main reasons why we decided to, you know, to go with this.
My side of the equation is a lot less romantic. I have a huge spreadsheet with lots of columns on it and like 200 different developers. And I basically went through and prioritized every single developer based off of all these different columns. And it was, you know, the type of games that they had, how much funding they had, where they were located at, like what the current state of their talent was, how many games they'd ship, like all these different lines went into this. And so from those 200, I got down to about 40 or so that I thought were really worth talking to. And so I talked to about 40, and that conversation that Dan says where Shawn just puts it out there up front, that's mostly just like, so I don't have to have a bunch of conversations with people that don't want to do the same thing that we want to do, right? So that 40 went down to about 20. You know, pretty quickly, because, you know, some people like, we only want investment, we only want to do this game, like they didn't want to blend into an organization like we were talking about. And then from that 20, it started to be a number of different conversations around alignment, right? Not just on the high level, but like, would these guys want to work in this setup? Because like everything I described, like, again, it sounds cool, right? But like living it is also cool, but less. Like, and so a lot of it was, you know, it's different. Like, you become a part of Fortis, so you're no longer a metagame, which is like, you guys have built up a company and a brand, and like it's something to give up in order to. There's trust. Like Jeferson as like a intermediary, I think helped a lot, right? In the referral for both sides, it increased my conviction. I think it increased your guys' conviction as well that it was trustworthy. But we had a lot of those referrals. Like, I talked to a lot of companies where the person who referred me, like they're mutually trusted too. The big difference was these guys really lined up on all of those columns. And when I talked with them, I felt like they had a chip on their shoulder, like they had something to prove, and they wanted to prove it coming out of Romania. And I love that. Like I like to back people that have like a certain amount of they seem calm, but like anger and rage and desire to show that like they can do something really great. And that's very motivating. And so that was kind of how it worked out.
Next question.
All right. So maybe a tricky question. How you said you built that list of hundreds of companies. Were they on the list before the referral?
Yeah. I had heard about them previously elsewhere, but like what I did was I went to all of my friends that worked in like a network like that, where they had either sat at a publisher or they had worked at a large company with a lot of different teams. And so Jeferson was this, also referred metagame, and so that gets like 2 gold stars, right? Which is sweet. But that conversation gets escalated quite a bit. There were like 3 or 4 other companies from Romania also on the list, but I didn't really know them, right? I didn't really because what I did is I searched by country first. It was like all the different places that I thought we would have an advantage as a company to move into. And so Romania was very high on that list because there's not a lot of VC money that gets deployed into Romania, which means that there's not a lot of like local competition for like design lane type of things, right? So like those are sort of the factors that kind of go into it. And so Romania sat on kind of like a high list, right? And so like 5 or 6 from just like raw searching happened, like kind of going through, and then it kind of got limited down from there.
All right. So, and if I may, because I have to drive these points whenever I can, 2 takeaways for indie developers from my side here. You execute cool stuff, you eventually get on people's lists. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is you go to events like Dev.Play, you meet people, you get referrals. That pushes you up the list.
Actually, when you start as an indie developer, you kind of, it's the first time, you don't really know what to expect. The good surprise is that if you're honest and you have other people vouching for you, like for that, like for seriously honest, and then you do good quality work, you will find people that are willing to and this is before Fortis, like it's from the deals that we made. Sometimes you need some help, but that was the good surprise, right? So we did high quality work, and we were serious, and we were we had a good reputation, and we found the projects. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes it could be a bit nerve-wracking because you didn't know what you're going to do in 1 year or 6 months as you were closing one project. But whenever we searched for work, we found it.
I think for my side, like another big aspect of wanting metagame was because of the local reputation that Dan and others had, right? So like I'm here doing a presentation, like it is almost impossible to get me to go somewhere and do a presentation. I've done like 2 in the last 8 years, right? Like because I like to sit at home in my little like cave and just do game stuff, right? Like, but if we were going to come to Romania, then the first question I had was like, tell me all the people that are working on interesting products, because either we can be supportive, we can try to make introductions for them, help them try to break out, or if at some point they decide that they want to do something else, like ideally we're the first place to call, right? Like we're the place where they want to come work, right? And as you can tell through my presentation, I weight very heavily towards trying to hire independent developers. They're a nightmare to manage, but they're amazing, right? Like when you channel the energy and the desire to be successful, it's great, right? And so places like Dev.Play are like amazing platforms to rapidly meet a ton of people. Like I spent all yesterday meeting a bunch of people, and they're awesome, interesting design ideas, goals, aspirations, right? It's very motivating to interact with, and it's also the sort of people that we would ultimately want to hire.
Right, thanks. I'd like to move to the next topic. We touched on this briefly in the morning panel about remote work, and we talked a lot about design in your presentation earlier. But let's cover this. You have the remote first world in the title. What is Fortis's vision about this? How are you, doing work? Can you talk in a remote first world? How can you talk a little bit about this, and how do you see this? Obviously it's remote first now. How do you see this evolving in 1 to 5 years? Maybe just comments on this topic a little bit.
I'm writing like a blog article on this right now, and I've rewritten it like 4 times. It's a disaster. We made a trade-off. We said, okay, the pandemic happened and remote work is now possible, right? Like culturally possible. People believe it's possible. It's not clear it's good, and it's not clear that it can be done as well, particularly in creative contexts, as being in person. But the trade-off for remote and losing that ability to build culture by going to coffee 3 times a week, right, is you get to hire the entire world. That's the trade-off, right? And so our belief is hiring the entire world. We're in 15 countries now, right? Like, is a better setup for building the type of team that we want. We can find more people that are probably culturally aligned with us than if we can only look in our backyard, right? So that's the belief. The way that model is going to evolve and why it's going to work, I think that, if you go onto LinkedIn or search on the internet, there's a billion thought leaders all explaining how remote work is going to work and it's all figured out. It's really not, right? Especially in creative contexts. Like, it is already hard to tell someone that their idea is not hitting. When you know them, you've spent 5 years in the same room together. They know that you care about them. Like, when they are hearing that message and they're sitting at home by themselves and they turn off the Zoom call, I think it lands completely differently, right? Especially if it's not coupled by like going out and grabbing dinner together afterwards or something like that. Losing that, I think, is a huge cost. And so from my perspective, I think it is an evolving process that I spent a lot of time talking to Jeferson about. I spent a lot of time working with the teams about, but how it's going to look in 3 years, 5 years, I don't know. But I will tell you that Fortis is remote first, and it's committed to that because it's what allowed us to hire people in all these different countries, allowed us to get the quality of talent that would be hard to get if I had just stayed hiring people in San Francisco. And so I think that trade-off is worth it, but I think the cost is something that we're going to continuously pay as we try to bring the company closer together to get more culturally aligned. And what that actually looks like functionally, I think will change a lot in the next year, in the next 2 years, the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think it also helped that we committed to it. So instead of being like, oh, maybe we'll try it out or whatever, like we're just like, oh, that's it. Because then you just have to figure it out. I think if you stuck a little bit in the middle, like maybe you can't actually figure it out. But like in our case, we just said, let's go. And I mean, yeah, there's a ton of problems. Like there's a ton of things that nobody knows how to do. And honestly, like that was one of the appeals personally for me as well to sell my startup and join, because I'm like, okay, nobody has ever done this. This is like actually a new thing, and not just the type of games, but also like building the company. Those are like very exciting, and those are the 2 things I'm excited about. I'm less a game guy than these guys. I also like the organizational part, like to actually build the company and the studio and the culture. So like that was like a very appealing challenge for me. And yeah, it's clearly not easy. I mean, we do have, I think, one advantage in which we have money, so we can do things like travel. So all of our teams get together like a couple times a year. Like this is hard to do if you don't have money, and we kind of have like so. And it does help when people get together; they get a boost, and their relationships get better. And like we try to work on like, okay, when people get together, how do we make sure that actually like resonates and gives value? So we actually spend time thinking about how to get together and what activities we do, etc. I mean, it's you just got to think the whole thing through, like from top to bottom.
So there's it's interesting because there's this I think popular view that for truly creative work, it's ideal for teams to be co-located. So it's interesting to see you guys challenging that very, very directly. Metagame guys, you guys were working like in the same place, the same location. before all of this, and I think even during the pandemic, some of you guys were going to the office. Um, how has this change been for you? Because I'm assuming. I mean, I'll ask another question about this later on. But you guys must be working with a bunch of people from 14 other countries now.
So with us, one of our differentiators was always the flexibility. Like it's true that we did work like together before the pandemic, but even like during the pandemic, we really embraced this remote work, and we hired some people that we never met like in real life, and we worked together like and it worked out great for more than 1 year until we actually got together and met in person. And right now we do have an office in Bucharest, but it's optional. So we have like great flexibility. People who want to come into the office, they can come into the office. People who want to work like even from other cities, there's no problem. And some people want some days to come to the office and some days to work from home, and that's fine as well. So it's whatever works for everybody. And we found that the people that we have really they choose what's best for them, and they're all performing at very high level.
Yeah, I would say like we also have a range. So I think like I would say metagame team is probably the most close. Like they're all kind of in Romania. They're all like Romanian, so they can kind of come to Bucharest like if they need to or whatever. Like they, so they're the more like geographically closely located team we have. We also have other teams which are like span like 10 time zones, and they work a lot more synchronously. And this is something we're like watching because we want to also make sure like which model works best, and we're trying different things because we actually want to see like.
Actually, that's a good. That leads to my next question actually, because I don't know exactly the 15 countries you guys are in, but I know Romania and I guess Brazil are the two biggest presences you have. Is that correct? So does that how do you organize teams? Are they completely cross location, or do you have teams that are more focused on one location, or how do you guys do that?
Yeah, so we do have like some teams that traditionally are more in one location, like here. The team in Portugal also, it's like because they were working together, they're pretty much still all working together, but they've been augmented with people from other locations now, and so we definitely don't hire, with maybe the exception of metagame, like we don't, or this team, which I can't say any names, but like based on this on their, we might say like get somebody on your time zone, or if you hire somebody like maybe Eastern Europe rather than like go hire somebody in the US, like just to make things a bit easier to kind of keep the. But most of the teams like to just hire the right person, like wherever they are, and sometimes the right person is in the US, sometimes the right person is in London, sometimes they're like in Brazil. So we basically don't. We try. Each team has their own time zone rules, so like how they work and how much overlap. We try not to do like a big overall like this is how everybody should work, because we don't know. So we're still trying to figure out. So we let the teams kind of self-organize around those things. But yeah, so basically we don't usually like limit where we hire. Like it's more about like where can we find the right person for the role.
And still on this topic, let's talk about company culture a little bit. So you acquired a few. Fortis acquired a few companies. How was the company, the resulting company culture formed? Is there like a unified, could we talk, I know it's been like 6 months, could we talk about like a unified Fortis culture, or is it still a little bit of the metagame culture, a little bit of the octagon culture, and so on? And how are the people who you are hiring, completely remotely from all these other countries, how are they adding to that to the company culture?
Yeah, culture is a tough thing, but we do spend a lot of time like planning for it. So we have values, and we talk about like how we want the company to be. So we definitely thought about that, and we broadcast that around the company. So we have, when people are onboarded, like we explain these are the values, these are the things that we want to be known as a company.
May I ask what are the values?
Well, let me give to the chief value officer.
So the vision's games where you belong, right? So we tend to focus quite a lot on building large communities inside of our games. Trying to make the company reflect, sort of the global approach that we have our games. We'd like the company to be a place where a lot of people belong to. Our mission is we want to create worlds that matter, that challenge minds, inspire connections, and build communities. And really, what we're saying is our games tend to be about some amount of accessibility that allows a large group of people to come, but then they get agency and choices in that community that allows them to make decisions, and those decisions allow them to have conversations that allow them to build relationships and in aggregate build communities, right? So mission, vision, great. The values are really around like, what do we have to live up to in order to give ourselves the best chance to try to create that? So the first one is we boldly go. If you're into Star Trek, it's a reference to that. But like, really what it comes down to is the first value is really that it's a risk-taking enterprise, right? It is at its core going to have some risk. If you want guarantees on your project surviving, if you want guarantees that the company will exist in 10 years, not your company, right? Like, we're going to try to build this thing, but it is an exercise in strategic risk taking. So we boldly go. Now, if you're going to kind of go off and towards any frontier, second value, that's we stay curious. We really look for lifelong learners. Like, we really like people that nerd out about stuff. So like when I'm reading through a resume, I generally ignore most of the resume, honestly, and just go down to the interests and then see whether or not they do weird things in their free time. And if they do weird things, I circle them and say, oh, okay. And then I usually start asking about that, right? So people that maintain a constant mentality of like growth, extremely valuable. Why? Because if you constantly rely on your history as the basis for all future decision making, it's really, really tough to get you onto like our model around how you think about things, right? So got to stay curious. Third one is pursue excellence with candor. This one's a tricky one. It's like probably our most dangerous value. Pursue excellence is basically our way of saying the standard is extremely high. And so standard ideas, ways of presenting things, things that have been fine for you at many times in the past will be often rejected within Fortis, and then be rejected with like 60 comments from me asking why you tried to do the thing that you're doing, which is very jarring to people. And that's the candor side of the equation, which is candor is often weaponized, where it's like honesty, but it's like the honesty your mother would give you when she says, don't marry that person, right? Like, it's like really trying to say, we care about you, but you have to understand this isn't where we want to be. This isn't at the level that we want to be at. And we think that like that genuine honesty is required to build the trust. Like, at least this person's always transparent with me. I will tell you, it lands wrong sometimes. Like, I am very blunt and very direct, and sometimes people just feel like I'm an asshole, right? It's not what I'm going for, but it feels that way. And that's why we have the fourth value, which is we make each other better, which sounds like window dressing, but really what it is like, there's 100 ways to give feedback to someone. If someone else is sitting there and watching it and they don't really know whether or not you're trying to make that person better or tear them down, that's a big problem for us, right? Like, the goal is to reinforce what we are trying to do and acknowledge the difficulty of what we are trying to do, and to give feedback in a productive way that makes a person want to come to work the next day after they failed. And so those four work together. I will tell you guys, it is really easy to say these things. It is very hard to get people to believe them and live them. And the right way of doing that is challenging. Part of the solution is, I write blog articles that try to explain this stuff, right? We talk about it. We do like fun videos inside of Fortis, which are like amazing to watch every month during all hands. I travel around. Steve Chang, our president's arriving in an hour, right? And we're going to spend the next 2 days with the team here, right? So I think there's a bunch of different things to do, but it goes back to my answer on your last question, Catalin, which is like, not guaranteed. Like, not guaranteed how to build good culture here. Like, what has historically been done is you get a really cool location. This is the Silicon Valley way. You get a really cool location. You get some soft serve at that location. That's like soft ice cream. It's like regular ice cream, but slightly softer. And you hang out. and you guys all drink the Kool-Aid, and you guys like eat soft serve, drink Kool-Aid, do like 2 hours of work, play volleyball, and it just kind of goes around and around in circles. And at the end, you become a Googler who just thinks googly things in Google ways, right? And we don't have that. So like what we have to do is like a much bigger exercise and alignment up front. That's like the 200 down to 3 companies that we actually acquired, right? And then it is like a very consistency, like trying to be very consistent in our behavior, which is tough when you're adding a bunch of people from a bunch of different countries. Last point, everyone inside of the company wants to make games, and I think that's like the most unifying thing about our industry. Like the coolest part about what mobile did was that it brought games to everyone. So now I've played the exact same games that everyone else has, right? And so I just think it creates a shared context, a shared set of passions and desires that make it very easy to communicate regardless of what background a person comes from. But it is different, right? Like, I go down to Brazil and like people cry, like in the office, they just cry. It's like an emotionally available organization, company. Like it's totally different than Silicon Valley. I come to Romania for the first time. Dan has to take me aside and he's like, these people may not respond to you at all. Yeah, it doesn't mean they don't like you. I mean, they may not like you, but like, and that it's like, it's very different because like the corporate culture is different. They did respond. They're great. Diana, there she is. She had about 20 questions for me. Still thinks I'm full of shit, but ask the questions, right? Like that back and forth and how to build that culture, I think is really difficult.
So, I mean, it sounds like you take this stuff very seriously. I have 2 follow-up questions. Quick one first. The stuff about the pursuit of excellence and candor, that kind of reminds me of the Netflix values. Was that an inspiration or just happened to?
I mean, so we did look at the Netflix values. They're kind of like a good reference, I think. But I mean, this is something that we just valued too. I think I think me and Shawn connected a little bit over this because we met through a Finnish friend, and Finns are very good at like just saying it. So, and we kind of both relate to that. So I think it was a bit of a starting thing in the comment. Like, let's just say, let's not waste time. I think the whole point for us is like, yeah, I mean, this is going to take time, and we want to explore. So we want to be able to do to implement the 3-player version, the 7-player version, the 10-player version. Like, so it takes time. We just don't want to waste time. It's like let's spend the time in the things that matter, and then if it's not working, let's just talk about it. Let's not be like talking in the hallways or whatever. I mean, luckily there's no more hallways now that everybody's remote, but I guess Slack is the new hallway. But like we do, we're just trying to build this place where like, look, if something's not working, just talk about it, and then we'll figure it out. Like it's better than like. But I think Shawn mentioned a good point. Like everybody needs to understand, and hopefully people are getting this idea. Like we're doing this because we want to get better. It's not because we want to like show power or be a dick or whatever. Like we really want like everybody to improve. So I think that helps with the learning.
The thing about values. Oh,
what I want to say is that sometimes you have to go through it to really see that this is how it is, right? I spent weeks with Aurelian on the concept and thinking again and again and again at the things that we wanted to do. It was so frustrating, but every single time, right, we got with something better. But every single time I got exactly the answer. There was no politics. It wasn't about me. It was about making it the best thought process possible, and it was so painful. I was in so much. It was so hard because it was frustrating, but it wasn't frustrating because of the human factor. It was simply frustrating because of the level of excellence that we were trying to achieve. Now, if we wouldn't have gone into politics or into moving things, if it's direct, then I can get the fastest way possible and with the highest speed to a higher level of thinking for that concept. It was so hard, and when we are like we're done with the concept, Ore and I was like doing a little dance in the backyard, like we were so happy, so relieved. But it was like the right kind of pride in the work we well done, right? And now that I've been through it, I really want it to be like that again, right? Because fine, it was frustrating, but I got there much faster. So once it happens, then you really sometimes you have to go through the process and kind of see that having that kind of candor, but saying that it's not good enough yet. It's really important. I don't want to do it in another way, if possible.
Cool. I'm mindful of time, so I'll just have last question before we open the floor to Q&A. You guys are more or less still in the honeymoon period. What are the plans? I mean, to the extent that you can talk about it, what are the plans for Fortis in Romania, and let's make it more general, in Eastern Europe in 2023?
Yeah, I would definitely say I kind of remind people that because we have issues, like every project has issues, and we obviously like have issues all like going on here and there. And I keep reminding people like this is the easy time because we're like in the dreamy prototyping. This is amazing. Like when we go to production, it's gonna get a lot harder. So yeah, I think everybody's aware that like there's work to be done. But I also think this is an important time to kind of build the company. So yeah, actually we'll be ready when the challenge comes. But then for the Eastern European part, I'll let the Eastern European people answer.
Yeah, I mean, certainly having a metagame in Romania, as a base is a great help for us, and we will expand significantly in Romania. So we have this project that we're working on, and for sure, like next year, as we move into production, we're gonna need a lot of talent, and we will probably also hire people for other projects, but basically we do hire the best people, and if in Romania we are able to get like the top 1% of the market, then for sure we will prioritize hiring here.
Yeah, right now we're a couple hundred people. We'll probably double in size over the course of the next year. And like according to our current model, most of that needs to come from places that aren't the United States, right? Like most of the hiring needs to be outside of the US in order for us to like do what we need to do correctly. In terms of other countries, yeah, other countries are on the list. Like Hungary was on the list, like Czech Republic is on the list. Like there are other places that we're looking, Bulgaria. But we started in Romania, and I think if we could fill a lot of our needs in Romania, that would be great. We have a number of European-based teams, and so the Romanian time zone works perfectly fine for a team that's based also in London, for example, right? Much tougher for a team that's based in the United States, right? Like for that, we tend to lean more on Brazil and Canada. So I would hope to add between 50 and 100 Romanians in the upcoming years would be pretty ideal for us.
Good luck with the hiring. All right, let's give a round of applause for Fortis, and I think.
Yeah, Noper. I just going to like Noper is amazing. So.
So let's take a couple of questions. Okay, we have one here.
This is for you, Noper.
Not for Noper. Now that Cavu is here as well, I want to ask a production-oriented question. So, from what I understand, Cavu is getting pushed by you to make good design documents to write. Am I getting it right? Okay, so where do you draw the line? So there is a point where you cannot imagine that much. We have a limit. Most of the innovations that we've planned for haven't been actually planned, like the internet and stuff like that. So you want to innovate, you want to create something new, but just with a design document, no matter how much you would deep think it, you won't be able to reach that point. Where do you draw the line where you say, okay, this is enough, let's start working on this, let's see how it shapes up, and how do you define this point?
How many prototypes have you done now?
I really don't know the huge number. The question here is, how do I learn the most, and where should I focus my attention, and how should I test faster? We tend to not test everything. Right? If something I can think about and I know how to solve it, right, then I will not test that. Right? So I will make the fastest test that I can, because at some points I'm not able to figure it out just by thinking about it. Right? Sometimes I have to test it. I'll make the fastest test that I can, and I will make it only for the things I cannot think about. And it can be a design, it can be a paper prototype, it can go to software. When it goes to software, it has to be or in paper product, it has to be the fastest test that I can make. So I can move the fastest that I can. So I will have answers that I cannot think about, and then I have to test it. And then I will have to think, how do I test the fastest?
Yeah, I would say like we have space in our process for just a document. So people spend like 1-2 months just working on a document. And then at some point we feel like, okay, this feels like, and it's a confidence thing. So it's very hard to, the line is like, but it's basically like people look at it and said, okay, this feels good. Now let's start actually testing the things that we laid out here. So like, and the concept becomes a little bit of a roadmap for the next stage, which is like, okay, like this stuff I know how to do, this stuff I have no idea. Let's try the 3-player version, the 7-player version. I don't know. It's a combination of different things. But yeah, so we always test them too. I mean, the document is great for structure because we want to make sure that we have thought it through. Like, can this live for 10 years? Can this be like, is this meaningful when it comes into the market? Are people going to stop playing what they're playing to play this? So because we don't want to just release a game without thinking those things through. So we do spend time there, but yeah, eventually we got to start testing in software or whatever.
The way it works is that 1 month, 2 month process that he's talking about, the concept, that's to earn your team. Like you can't interview to be a game director at Fortis. You can interview for the right to pitch a game, and the right to pitch the game is based off of kind of how senior you are inside of the in terms of your design, right? Once you have established that concept document, then all you're basically trying to do is figure out the fastest way to test against all those unknown questions. So the prototype is usually not to just like do a version of a thing. It's to build a platform for testing like 20 different ways of doing a particular thing. So when I mentioned how do you organize the 100 people, that would be an example. Like the prototype should basically allow you to reorient the teams in all of those different versions relatively quickly so that you can test 40 different ways of organizing those 100 people. And that's like a great prototype because you can do a bunch of versions, right? Now, how many you do, like I said, I don't know. Aurelian, how many are you guys up to now? You probably pay attention. 30, 40, 50? How many versions have we gone through?
No, I have no idea. So many.
Yeah.
Probably 50 something.
It's been a lot, right? And so that's been in, I don't know, how many months of active development for you guys? 4 or 5?
4.5 months, yeah. No. Just for prototyping. And we're not done. So we continue to test and make quick tests and learn about the game that we're trying to make.
And eventually we will soft launch and get real player data too. But like this. All right, maybe we're just staying prototype then.
All right, we're out of time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.